Welcome back to the Kingfisher Podcast with Eric and Bron Whitley. Thanks for joining us once again today. We're so glad to have you listening in with us.
Yeah, welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day today. It's winter in Brisbane, which is my favourite time of year. And we have the sun shining and everything good.
Yeah, it's been a bit cold actually for Brisbane.
I'm loving it.
We get about 2 weeks of winter every year.
It's when the snow falls down south, which I know is strange for our North American listeners and our European listeners, but when the snow falls down south in Australia, we get cold winds up north in Australia.
Yeah, I saw some of our favorite ski resorts down there. Got a big dumping of snow over this weekend and over the last few days.
Yes, if only we could go there.
Now, the other day, we were having a conversation, as we often do. We were just sitting out, the end of the day. Sometimes we try and just go sit out on our back porch and reconnect and just have a conversation. The kids tend to ignore us there, and so we can actually talk without being interrupted very often.
Apart from the dog.
The dog does interrupt, but she's too cute to get mad at. So we put up with that. But we were having this discussion, and you recently started leading in our church's discipleship ministry, which is called Streams, and you were reading something that was talking about the word being blessed or the blessed life, and I thought it was a really interesting topic to explore today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that everyone thinks about at some point in your life. If you're going through something hard or struggling or there's a lot of drama or conflict going on, you probably have considered, how do I get to a place where my life is happy? And you hear this a lot from the world as, living my best life. People want to live their best life. And I think the thing that has always struck me about the Bible, I know a lot of people go back and forth wondering, why does God give us so many directions and instructions? And if you read the Bible closely, though, those instructions are sort of like a guidebook for how to live your best life.
It's not so much a rule book. I know a lot of people like to say it's a bunch of do's and don'ts, and it's like this rule book that I have to follow, and if I don't follow it well enough, I'm in trouble, and I have to be so good to have God's favor and all of that. But it really is more of directional for our life. If you want a life that is blessed, we would also often say, then you follow and are obedient to God's word and to God's direction.
That's because the things that he gives us guidance with, the instructions and the guidelines he lays out in the Bible, they are the way to have a blessed life. It's not just, I want to spoil your fun, so I'm going to put a bunch of rules in place that you have to follow legalistically. That's really not the gospel message. That's not what God has laid out for us. It's more about, okay, I love you and I want you to have a blessed life. I want you to live your best life. And so here are some guidelines to help you not hurt yourself and hurt those around you.
I mean, it's just like, I'll use a very simple example. Being a parent, we often have rules, and we make jokes about don't run with scissors and don't cross the street without looking and don't play with fire and all these little, stereotypes that we put into parenting rules. But really what it boils down to is as an adult who's wiser and more experienced, we actually know, okay, there's dangers in these things. I'm not trying to inhibit my children's fun or their behavior or whatever by saying don't run with scissors. It's just, I know something could happen and it could be very detrimental to you. So this is why I have this rule, or I make that statement. And I think God, he calls himself a good father. I think very much that's what we're seeing here. But just like rebellious children, we want to do what we want to do. And we often go, well, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to do it myself. And unfortunately, sometimes we learn, sometimes it takes a long time to learn, but we learn the hard way. Yeah. And it's through those failures or those consequences to shunning what God has told us is the right thing to do.
I think at the crux of all of that, the foundation really is whether or not we believe that God is a good father who loves us and wants the best for us. And that's a really hard thing to accept for some people. I was doing prayer ministry with someone this week, and that was something that she found hard to absorb, even though if you just asked her the question, she'd say, yes, of course. But if you sit down and try and absorb it and speak it as a truth in your life, that can be a difficult thing to do if you have issues of trust or if you've had conflict with your earthly parents or, things like that. So that's the foundation, really. How does God see you? His child who he created and loves, and do you trust him as a loving father to do what's best for you?
I love that you brought that up, because there is often a great divide between our cognitive assent to an idea. Oh, God's a good father and he only wants the best for me. And, and we can quote the Bible verses. He works all things for good to those who love him, and he'll do this and he'll do that. But I think it's not more than just believing. I think it's the application, because I know I've been challenged even this year with the things that I truly deeply believe, but then applying that belief, and that for me has looked like trust. It's looked like patience. It's looked like, just waiting in discomfort, and applying what I actually believe has become the hard part more than just believing it.
And believing it for yourself, not just for other people.
Well, that too. And yeah, we often can go, well, we'll say that to someone else going through a hard time. Oh, well, God's got you. God's going to do it for you. But then when we're going through the hard time, sometimes, I know if you're honest like me, I'm going, God, where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? I don't feel like you're doing anything. What's happening? Hello, it's me, but in that waiting, I could share a testimony of just this past week. I've been praying about some work and some different things and different opportunities. I've sort of narrowed it down to a couple of different paths. And for at least a couple of months, maybe more, I've been going, God, plan A, plan B. Which one is it, And he wasn't opening really a door on either one of them. Now, he wasn't holding me back from either one of them, but neither was actually taking, getting momentum and moving forward. And then just suddenly all at once, God answers my prayer.
Yeah.
But it was in that waiting though, where I was really worried. I was going, my brain works like this, where it goes into 100 different answers or excuses or possibilities, whatever you want to call it, of, oh, did I not hear right? Is there sin I need to get rid of? God, are you not who you say you are? God, did you not say this? I can come up with all these answers and follow those trails, but none of them really satisfy. And so it's one of those things, I think we have to learn to actually apply our beliefs. It's great to say, I believe God, but it's another thing to apply it.
Yeah. The blessed life is really, as I say, living your best life. And that's sort of putting a modern twist on it, because blessing, sometimes we don't really necessarily understand fully what that is. Obviously, with the word blessing, there's more of a hand of God involved, I think, because we're blessed by someone, and that is God. As a Christian, we believe that. And the Bible, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible about how to have a blessed life. And even the 5th commandment says, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And that's sort of a theme repeated throughout the Bible, which is honor your parents and things will go well.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at that and say, well, does God bless people because they honor their parents, or do things go well with them because they honor their parents as a natural consequence? Life is a little easier when you honor your parents.
I mean, probably most of you who are listening have been teenagers before, and what being a teenager is like, where you're testing your limits and you're testing your freedom, and oftentimes there are consequences to that. You drive too fast and you get a ticket. You stay out too late and you get grounded, whatever it may be. But our parents have the best in mind for us, and they know what is right. And when we follow that, we might not have quite as much fun or quite as much adventure, but
we'll take quite as much risk.
Well, that's the thing. But we're put into a safe place where we're able to continue to thrive and grow.
Yeah. I think it doesn't mean you do everything your parents say for the rest of your life, but you honor them and respect them and show them that honor and respect, and, heed their advice, listen to it, take it in. And sometimes we don't know why our parents say the things that we do and they do, and maybe we think they're in the wrong, especially when we're a lot younger. But if we listen and take in what they're saying and weigh it and give them honor for their position, then I think it does actually have a positive impact on our lives. I know for me, I give a lot of weight to what my parents say and always have. I listen to them and their wisdom. And I think it has really helped me to take paths that were wiser and straighter than I might have otherwise. And the times where I didn't listen, it's given me a few twists and turns along the way.
And even as parents, on the flip side of that, we've got teenagers in the house and they're starting to look towards university and careers and life as an adult. And we've been able to share our mistakes and failures as well as our successes and at least the wisdom that we've gained, where we go, you know what, it seems like that's really important, but it's not. But this is really important. So major on this, minor on that, and don't worry about it so much. And I think if they are able to take in that advice, I think it'll actually put them ahead of the curve where other young people may not have received that advice.
Yeah. When we talk about blessing, a lot of people think about the Sermon on the Mount, which is in Matthew 5, and I'll just read that quickly. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So there's a lot in that.
We could spend weeks on those few little verses. There's a lot of transactional stuff going on there, that your life, if we take and say your life will be good, like we change from blessed to your life will be good if you are merciful, because you'll be shown mercy. And all those other promises, they're very transactional, and it's very relational as well. There's a lot of relationship going on. If you act a certain way, others will relate to you in a certain way.
I do think a lot of what this is talking about with blessing is that, if you treat other people with love and treat them well, then they will reciprocate. Now, we know that's not always the case. There's a general rule for life, treat others well, they'll treat you well.
Yeah, for sure. And like I love the one that says, if you hunger and thirst for righteousness, then you'll be filled. Like you will be satisfied. If you're hungering for him, he's not going to hide himself from you. He's not going to withhold from you. If those are the things that you're hungering for, you're going to get it.
Yeah. And obviously, one is blessed are the peacemakers. Well, yeah, because if you make peace, you are going to be more blessed, because you will have a happier life if you make peace wherever you go. You can look at that from the level of family members. If you make peace in your family life will be less tumultuous, less conflict, happier, more love, all of that sort of stuff. If you look at it from a countrywide level, if you are a peacemaker at a countrywide level, then you're not going to have wars with your neighbors, and that's better for everyone.
Yeah, on that national level of not provoking others. And because I'm sure we all know someone who is just cantankerous, and that's a good old Southern word. And wherever they go, there's conflict, there's drama, there's things happening. And often they try to be the victim of that, but they're actually the instigator of a lot of conflict. And I know I have met with people, and they just seem to go, wherever they go, they have drama and conflict with others.
Yeah, and they often don't see it. They don't realize that they're provoking that.
Yeah.
But if you go about your life with the intention of, I'm going to make peace in this situation, and I've had to learn to do that for sure. Like in job settings and so on, I've had to learn, okay, I might be right in this situation, but at the moment, the best thing for me to do is make peace.
See, that's an old Southern expression. Do you want to be right or you want to be happy? I think it's really true. Like that's probably a secularized version of what we're talking about is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is wanting to, well, I'm right and what I'm saying is correct. And And you can be right, but you can do it in a way that makes peace. And sometimes it's more important to put the relationship ahead of being right in that situation, obviously depending on context.
Or as we tell our kids sometimes, it's better to say nothing at all. If you don't have something nice to say, just be quiet, you know?
Yeah.
I always used to remember that because there's a proverb that says even a fool appears wise when he doesn't say anything.
When he holds his tongue,
Yeah.
I always love that verse. It's such a great one. And it's true, you know, I can think of many people throughout life who you thought they were really wise and had very deep insights until they started speaking.
Totally. And so, you know, the word happy, a lot of people talk about having a happy life. And I'm one of the people that I don't like the word happy, that I'm trying to find happiness, because I think happiness is like this shallow version.
Yeah, it's kind of self-centered.
It's very self-centered, but I think it's just so shallow compared to something like joy or a blessed life.
We see it sort of as an emotion, a temporary emotion.
Yeah. And so we're not talking about just a happy life. I guess you could term it. That's a very common term, you know, happy wife, happy life,
I just
all
want
that
my
kind of
kids
stuff.
to be happy.
Yes.
Yeah. What you mean is you want them to have a blessed life.
Totally.
Because, you know, emotions go up and down each day. And if you want them to have a happy life, what you don't mean, I never want them to have any ups and downs of emotion, but I want them to be blessed and have deep joy.
Yeah. I looked into the original language to the Hebrew for the word blessed, because I think it's really important to look at those things sometimes. And it's the word, I'm not a Hebrew scholar by any stretch, and so I probably am going to pronounce it wrong, but it's baruka is the Hebrew word for blessed. And I'm like, well, what's the definition? How do they define it? Because Hebrews tend to, their language is a feeling language as opposed to, we're Greek, ours is a Greek origin.
Logical, rational,
which is more of a thinking language. So we think what we're saying, whereas they're feeling what they say. But it just basically means a good life. It's really simple. It's a good life. And you can define that in a lot of different ways. And I think it's good that it's a little bit general and broad, because if you try and define good life, I think we come into it with certain aspirations or certain expectations of what that looks like probably wealth or comfort or that sort of thing. Whereas so much of what the Bible's talking about is more about your being and your contentment and how you are as a person, not necessarily the circumstances around your life, because you can be blessed and live in a, dirt hut somewhere, or you can be blessed and live in a mansion. And, you hear this all the time. You hear about people who travel and they go, they have nothing. They're very poor. They have very little resource, all this, but they're the happiest people, most joyful people I've ever met. And then we know lots of people who have lots of wealth and material things, and they're not super happy people.
One of the things that kind of came to mind when we were talking about that for me is that I think when the Bible talks about blessing or having a good life, if you want to term it that way, which is the Hebrew, as you say, I think it's not just referring to like one person as an individual. It's not, when we read the Bible, it's not really just about us. It's about all of us together as a community. It's more of a community focus. So when the Bible tells us to do this or that and it will be blessed, it means we as a collective will be blessed. So when you don't commit adultery with someone, the collective will be blessed by that because you're not harming others. So there's an element, I think, in the biblical phrase of blessing. I think it's referring to the collective, not just the individual. Yeah,
well, as Westerners, we're very individualistic in our thinking. Like whenever we read the Bible, we pretty much read it through that lens. It's all about me. Whereas, there are a lot of cultures that are more community-minded. I've done a lot of mission work in Japan, and that's very much how they see themselves. If I'm giving a sermon for salvation and talking about evangelism and giving your life to God, I don't use words like sin and guilt and doing the wrong thing, because that doesn't relate to them, because they're thinking more on a community level, whereas that's very individualistic of what have I done or not done, whereas they're on shame and honor. And it's like the actions I do don't just reflect upon me, they reflect upon my community, my immediate family and my school and my community around me, my business, whatever else. And so when they're living their life, they're working for the community. They're doing what they do to bring honor to the community. And when they fail, it brings shame, not just to them, but to everyone around them that they're associated with. And it's a really different concept. And we as Western thinkers, we very much think about it. It's me. I'm good or bad. I did the right thing, wrong thing.
Yeah, I think the flaw with the Western way of thinking, and I think honestly that there's probably, the truth is somewhere between both. We are individuals responsible for our own sin and behaviour, but also everything we do impacts the people around us. And the flaw in the Western style of thinking about sin is that a lot of people, mostly if you're not a Christian, I would imagine it's mostly if you're not a Christian, think that I can do whatever I want and I only care about the impact on me. And if it impacts that person, well, that's too bad. That was their choice to get involved, or that was their choice to be there, or whatever it was. But it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't negatively impact me. And we don't think about how it's going to impact other people or care about that enough, I think.
Well, we very much think a lot of what we do doesn't impact others. If I'm going to, I don't know, I don't have an example, but if I'm going to do something and it hurts me, we often rationalize it. Well, it didn't hurt anybody else.
Well, here's an example.
Except for it does.
Yeah, in the United States, they've legalized marijuana in a lot of the cities, right? Or at least they don't prosecute. Now, a lot of people who smoke marijuana say it should be legalized because it doesn't impact me and it's fine. But they don't seem to care that when a bunch of people smoke pot and in the city, the whole city smells like stank. Like, it's nasty. And you're going around with your kids and the kids are like, what is this disgusting smell that's following us everywhere? I've even heard people say, teachers saying kids are coming to school with a contact high because their parents smoke so much. And then you've got a homelessness crisis and a mental health crisis because there are people who are smoking so much pot that they're going into manic episodes, bipolar, all kinds of mental health crises. And that impacts everyone. It doesn't just impact that person. It doesn't just impact their family and friends, which obviously it does impact them a lot, but it also impacts the whole community.
Yeah, and you can say, well, that's not me and I can do it in moderation. And that may be true, but it may not be true. You may lose control of that, and then it does have impact on other people. I mean, our son, he plays baseball. He went to America to play some tournaments over there and spent some time in New York. And he came home telling those stories.
Yeah, well,
he was like, what does that smell? And they had to tell him.
Yeah, I was not thrilled that my 12-year-old son had to learn what marijuana smelled like because he walked through New York City.
Yeah, just out on the streets. And I had a similar experience in Atlanta when I was there recently. So I think our actions impact people a lot more around us than we give it credit for.
Yeah, it's like the butterfly effect. Remember that movie? Every little thing you do actually does impact people around you and consequences for the future.
Yeah, no, I never saw that one.
I didn't see it, but I it's a theory.
Concept,
yeah, the concept.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and getting back to the Bible, like it does seem to have that community feel to it. I think you're completely right in saying that when we all live that way, because God has created us to be relational. God didn't create us to be alone. I mean, he created us for relationship with him initially and there, but very quickly in Genesis, he realizes it's not good for man to be alone. And so that's where he created others to be together, that we need each other and we need relationship. I think as we go about our lives, if we can think more in a community sense, and it's the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If we could live just that simply, I mean, life would be a lot different.
Yeah. Psalm 1 gives us a really good illustration, I think, of how to live our best life, that blessed life. It says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers."
Yeah, I mean, because it ties you in. Like, I love that picture, that metaphor of a tree by a river. It's never without water. It's never without resource. It's always there. and then it bears fruit, and then it, blossoms in its seasons, and it's amazing. I love that. That is one of my favorite Psalms. At the beginning of that, there's 3 different things. It talks about walking in the steps. So not
walking in step with sinners. Yeah.
So don't walk in step with the world and
with the wicked,
with what's there. Then it says not to stand in their way.
Stand in the way that sinners take.
So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I'd love to do an exegesis on that and break it all down, because it almost says kind of mind your own business is almost what I'm hearing a little bit. Maybe not to ignore sin, but we don't stand in the way of others for doing what they want to do. And then sitting in the seat of scoffers, that's my old New King James version.
Scoffers or mockers, yeah.
I learned when I was a kid. Just sticks in there. I can't get past it.
If you look at the New Life version, because that was the NIV, this is the New Life version, it says, happy is the man who does not walk in the way sinful men tell him to, or stand in the path of sinners, or sit with those who laugh at the truth.
I love it when a translation brings some new life and insight there.
Yeah.
So we can learn a lot from that verse.
But those are just good rules for life.
They
Don't do those things.
It's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really simple, and it brings good life.
Yeah. So if you are finding that there's so much conflict and drama in your life, and you're just wondering, where is this blessed life? Just meditate on that. It says meditate on his law day and night. Well, what it means is read the scriptures, meditate on the scriptures, and because the clues are all in there of how to live a blessed and happy life.
That's that. And applying that, acting it out, not just thinking about it, not just believing it as we were talking about before, but actually applying it to your life. I think those are the things that come.
And it doesn't mean nothing bad's ever going to happen, or there's never going to be any conflict or ups and downs, but it will help you deal with and confront and come up with strategies to address when those things happen. And we were talking the other day about, the times in our marriage where we've had conflict, how we choose to address that conflict as a couple has really impacted whether we have a blessed and happy marriage or not.
Yeah, because we were talking about that movie, The Breakup, and I saw some little clip of it, and it's painful to watch.
It is.
It's very relatable, I will admit, but it's very painful to watch because it's like you make every wrong statement you could possibly make as a man and a woman to each other.
But as you were describing it to me, because I've watched it, and I said it's just the most depressing movie because they literally could just sit down and have a conversation out from a place of love and humility and vulnerability with each other and resolve all of these issues.
Yeah, totally.
So easily.
But I have to say, I did like the line because they were arguing about doing the dishes, and the line was something along the lines of, "You're mad at me because you want me to want to do the dishes? Who would do that? Who wants to do the dishes?" And I'm like, I'm there with you, man.
You feel his pain.
Preach, brother.
But yeah, like I say, if you come from a place in that situation of saying, okay, how does the Bible say I should respond to this sort of conflict? It tells us that we should love one another. It says submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. One of the things that a good friend of mine told me once, and I've always remembered it because it's in the Bible as well, but it is this idea of everything you do it as though it's for Christ.
Yeah.
And if you use that as a general rule, that's really going to help you in all those situations.
Well, I was talking to a good friend just this week, and he's having a hard time at work, and that's exactly what he said. He just said work is horrible, but he said the Bible says I should work as if I'm doing it for God. So that's the only way I'm finding joy and finding momentum and motivation to do this is because I'm not doing it for my boss, because he's completely demotivated me with the things and decisions that are happening and have been made. And I'm doing it for God. That's how I'm getting through, is I'm doing it for God. And I was like, man, that's really wise and mature of you. That's huge.
And it is. And it's really changed my perspective, because there definitely are times when you're married where you look at your spouse and you think, oh, why don't you just do this or that? Or how come you said that and that really hurt my feelings or whatever? And I'm doing so much around here. I'm carrying this load and that load and whatever else. And then with your kids, you're like,
I mean, you're speaking hypothetically, right?
Hypothetically, I don't know anyone like this.
Yeah.
It's just a, random illustration.
Yeah.
But then you've got teenage kids and you're like, they're not grateful for anything. We're working so hard to put them through school and all of the extracurriculars and paying all this money for food and having a roof over their head and all this stuff. And they're so ungrateful, and you ask them to take out the rubbish and they complain and da-da-da-da. They always want you to make food for them and all this sort of stuff and do their laundry. And you can get grumpy about it. Anyone can get grumpy about those things. But when I started to say to myself, I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for God, I'm doing it for Christ, it really gave me this sense of joy. And I wanted to do those things. And it really changed my attitude around, like, I'm being really honest, like it really did changed my attitude to being like, I want to make them a toasty sandwich. I want to do their laundry and do it well and hang it up properly and all that sort of stuff, because I'm doing it as though for Christ.
Yeah. I mean, as well, doing it for love for them, like love is a sacrificial act in a lot of ways. It's not always this, I'm so glad to give. Sometimes it's, I'm going to do this only because I love you.
Yeah.
And I know I feel that way oftentimes when I'm having to drive all over the country for baseball and other things. And even we're out of milk and we need milk for this recipe. I'll go to the store. I don't want to go to the store. My shoes are off and I'm sitting here comfortable, but I will go to the store for the love of my family. And I think it just, when you have that perspective outside of yourself and your own comfort and your own desires, and you do it for others, even though it might be inconvenient or uncomfortable, then, I go to the store and then a really beautiful meal is made for me. You know, so there's a blessing out of it.
And I think if you do it for Christ instead of just for that person, which you're doing it for them out of love as well, but if you do it for Christ, you're not expecting the gratitude, you're not expecting a pat on the back, you're not expecting anything in return. And so it just takes that pressure off, and it takes away that disappointment that you feel and the grumpiness that comes when you it's not reciprocated, it's not appreciated. We're doing it for Christ, and he just fills you with this joy that is really unexplainable.
Yeah, and there's so many verses like that. The peace that surpasses understanding, the trust in the Lord with all your heart, and he'll make your path straight. There's so many things that coincide with these promises and with this attitude and this way of living that does make you have a blessed life, and it makes you have a good life. Like, it works out. It all works out in the end, and it's really, really lovely. Well, we sincerely hope that you are living your best life and that you're living a good life and that God has blessed you. If you want to grow in this, we just really encourage you, get into God's Word. Read Matthew 5, Psalm 1, and there's many, many other places in God's Word that talks about blessing and what a blessed life looks like and how to attain it. This has been the Kingfisher Podcast with Eric and Bron Whitley. Thank you so much for listening today.